Hello and welcome to Attention Central Texas. I'm Angela Galbraith, your host, and I'm elated today to have with us John M. Beckling Jr. Hello, sir. How are you?
I am just fantastic.
Good, good. You look fantastic.
Thank you.
And you're with PTSD Foundations of America.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. First of all, tell our audience what PTSD exactly is.
PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And it becomes a disorder when people don't handle their routine post-traumatic stress. And it wears on. I deal mostly with combat soldiers, so I'm dealing with those that have been deployed far too many times. I've had some people in my group, they've been deployed as many as 9 times.
Are you serious?
Oh yes, definitely. The amount of deployments, if you're a career soldier, your opportunity of going overseas to one of those countries where you're liable to run into combat situations is great.
My goodness. Wow, Jesus, and you're a combat veteran yourself.
The ace in the hole that I have, so to speak, is that I spent 3 years in Vietnam, 35 months straight. And in a combat situation, I did probably route clearance and as an MP and convoy escort, so we were in the middle of it more often than not.
Okay, so what services does PTSD Foundations of America offer the soldiers?
We have the local support group, which is peer counseling with each other here at Hark Heights Methodist Church there on Tuesday nights at 6:30. But if you were really down and out and maybe even suicidal, we have an in-residence program at Houston. They could take care of 85 soldiers at one time, 6 months. While they're there, if you've got an alcoholic problem, there's AA meetings 3 times a week. They have anger management classes, they have finance classes, they have all-day counseling on Wednesdays. They load them up, go to a place called the Refuge Counseling Center, and all day long they speak with one-on-one with professional counselors as needed. They get up in the morning, they do physical exercise, PT is what we would call physical training, attend Bible studies, and then they have twice a week they have the combat trauma meetings. We utilize a 12-step Tri-Center program for the soldiers. It's Combat Trauma Healing Magazine manual. For the family members, it's When War Comes Home.
When War Comes Home.
When War Comes Home. Because there's a process that you left one way and you're not the same person having been to war when you come back. And so it's to help them, family members deal with grief and loss that is accompanied with that. Also, there's the problem of a soldier will distance himself.
Isolate themselves.
Isolate themselves as they're getting ready to deploy because they don't know whether they're going to come back or not.
Right.
And then the wife or the family member has to assume responsibilities that he used to take care of. So he's been gone for 9 months or a year, and all of a sudden he comes back home, and guess what? She's doing all the work, and he's wanting to take over. So there's some real adjustment issues that are going on in that situation. And plus there's some grief issues. And so the manual for the When War Comes Home has an excellent session on grief. A lot of the soldiers, to me, are suffering from false guilt.
False guilt.
Yeah. I should have died, I lived, he died.
Also known as survivor's guilt.
Survivor's guilt, yeah, that's the exact word for it. And various other things. I had to do this. If I would have trained my fellow soldier better, maybe he'd be alive today. And stuff just happens.
It does.
And in war, you have to deal with whatever the war throws at you. The sad part is when they have this post-traumatic stress disorder, they are very likely to kill themselves.
Suicide.
Suicide.
So then,
I mean, people think, oh, he's got PTSD. Is he going to kill me or hurt me or whatever? And I get a little ruffled at at my core when people think that because they're going to hurt themselves.
Right. There's no education about it.
And the latest statistic that I have was a 2015 that the VA did. They're talking about 20.6 people a day committing suicide.
Per day?
Per day.
That's staggering.
Yeah, it's an enormous amount. I personally think it's higher because that doesn't, that suicide talks about somebody that left a note saying, I've committed suicide.
Right.
What about the guy that commits suicide by vehicle homicide? What about the person that dies shooting by police officer?
Exactly.
They couldn't do it themselves, so
Forced
they
it,
put
yes,
themselves
in
and
that
forced it in
position.
that position. The police officer didn't want to do it either, but
Right, had to.
it had to do what they had to do. And so they harmed themselves. And what's sad is the veterans or even active duty, about 30 per 100,000 versus the civilian population, 14 for 100,000 suicides.
Suicides.
That's amazing.
That's sad.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do is prevent one suicide at a time. What they're trying to do is give soldiers at Camp Hope,
And
our
that's in
veterans.
Houston, Camp Hope.
That's in Houston. They could 85 people they could house totally free. You walk
Totally
in
free.
with just a shirt on your back. They'll give you a gift card, send you to the Walmart to buy your pants and socks and things you need.
Awesome.
Feed
Awesome.
you, bed you, the whole 9 yards. Provide counseling on a regular basis. Kind of like going back in the military in that you're going to do physical exercise in the morning.
PT.
You know, you're going to be restricted for that first 30 days.
Well, that's
of
good. The
what you
physical
can do.
activity is good.
You know, counseling, peer-to-peer counseling, 2 support groups, very similar to what I'm doing on Tuesday night. You got combat vets talking about anger.
Anger.
You know, anger's a
That's
big,
like the biggest
big
thing,
deal.
the anger and the outburst. And
Outbursts and just seem like they're out of control. And just knowing that they're not alone is a really good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and that it's ultimately help. And there's a new normal.
A new
You
normal.
know, yeah, that's what we call this, a new
New
normal,
normal.
which
I
is
like
our
that.
buzzword. So in other words, you're never the same having been to war, but you can find a new normal
new
for
normal,
yourself.
yes.
And
How to
so,
cope and adjust
you want to cope and adjust. You realize that you were created for a purpose.
Thank God.
There's hope, and there's love.
Yes.
And all that stuff can be
Love. Oh, my
recaptured
goodness.
again. You know, myself, my own individual healing from the trauma of 3 years in combat came from a chaplain that took time to say, "Okay, have you given this to God?" Yes, I have.
And it is a spiritual battle.
And it's a
isn't it?
spiritual battle as well as a moral battle, because
Right.
we're learned as Americans a certain way to act and respond, and some war prevents a lot of
Right.
that from happening the way we wish that we could have handled something. And so he turned around and says, "Well, when are you going to quit playing God, John, and forgive yourself?"
Wow. Forgive yourself for surviving.
Yeah. For
Or not
surviving,
doing
or for
more.
some of the things I had to do or didn't
Yeah.
do or whatever. And so ultimately I was just really thankful for him, because that was the start of my healing process.
Yes.
Because when we came back from Vietnam, they told us to stuff it and get on with your life.
Wow.
Now, if you've got an infection in your body system and you don't take care of it, that infection is going to
gonna spread
kill
and
you,
kill you,
spread
yes.
eventually. So it's the same thing with post-traumatic stress disorder. If you're not dealing with what's causing that stress, eventually it's going to kill you, or you're going to take your life because you feel like you've lost hope.
Hope.
And what Camp Hope, which
I like
is an
that, Camp
appropriate
Hope.
name, offers hope. And ultimately, by the time they finish the 6 months, and that's the other thing, if they don't get it all done in 6 months, they're not going to throw them out.
Good.
They're going to work with them
Work
until
with
they get them into transition. And in order to get transition, they'll help them find a job, whether that's
Awesome.
college. They'll give them counseling to go ahead and financial counseling, how to manage a budget and do the things they need to do
Yes.
to survive. And then ultimately, a lot of the soldiers that leave there already have a job.
Awesome.
And they're ready to transition. Sometimes they need to go to college so they could make a transition and be hired. But so the success rate is very good.
Good.
And there's no rush. I
good to
mean, they
hear.
really take care of the soldier. And we're thankful for all the people that donate to it, that make this service available.
Yes.
We have probably on a weekly basis, out of the 13 chapters, 500 soldiers plus family members that are meeting weekly.
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 That's wow.
And there are
a lot of people getting
a lot
help.
of people getting help.
That's good. A lot of people
and it's
getting help.
growing. We're going to add a unit in Phoenix, Arizona comes
good,
this summer. Yep. I've had this local unit here at Harker Heights Methodist Church for 5 years now.
Right.
And I've seen people come in angry as all get out and leave and having found a new normal.
Thank God.
I'm thankful for the lives that have been saved that haven't committed suicide, and I know of a couple, and that not to mention the ones I don't know about. And then I'm thankful for the marriages that have been saved, because it takes a terrible
toll on the
marriage, unequivocally. So when the wife has some tools to deal with, so that she could understand what happened to my husband and why did he turn into this monster and how did he change.
This is not the guy I married.
It's not the guy that you married.
Right.
It's completely different. So they're helpful in that thing. And so giving the tools to deal with grief and the change in the husband and the inner thing. And then with this constant deployment that the military is doing, you've got this constant accordion kind of effect. They isolate themselves, they separate themselves from the family, they deploy, and then they've got to reintegrate. And next thing you know, you're going to deploy again 9 months down the road to get adjusted again, you're going to deploy again. And so this separation goes, it takes its toll on a family and on the kids and the anger and how they're dealing with it. So they get spouses wind up with what we call secondary PTSD.
Okay, because it affects them as well.
It affects them as well.
Family.
The entire family. And so it's a spiral that then promotes itself on into the kids.
Oh, Lord.
I mean, so then you've got
they don't
kids.
know what's going
they don't know
on.
what's going on.
Daddy's
And
changed.
having difficulty there. Why I got involved in PTSD America is, right now their 18 budget is $3.8 million. Only, and I want to get this right, 4.8 goes to overhead.
Okay.
So in other words, 95%
of the money is
going to help soldiers.
Go to help towards rehabilitation.
I went down there to visit the place. I attended the board meeting personally.
Good.
Before I signed on and saying, okay, I'm going to go to work for you.
Exactly what you were getting
I want to
into.
know what I'm getting to. But I wanted to be a part of a nonprofit organization that's spending its money not on overhead, but on individuals.
Actually what it's supposed to do.
It's supposed to do. And the rooms are nice. I spent a week down there just observing the place before I signed on. I lived in one of the rooms. I spent the all day on a Wednesday into the counseling sessions that they do at the Refuge Center. Attended the twice weekly things. I didn't attend AA because I don't have an AA problem, but I attended their anger management classes, their stress relief classes. It's delightful. I mean,
it's well, I thank God for Camp Hope, and I thank God for you, John, and the work that you're doing for our soldiers. And I thank you, our viewing audience. Tune in next time to see what's going on right here in our local area.